Okay, in this video what we're going to be doing is going in and creating some rubble. In the previous videos we were doing it with a particle system. This one we're going to be doing an actual physical effects. So it's going to be a mass effects way to create rubble. So now in order to do this we're going to need to get us a script. Okay, so if you go over and do a search for script spot, then that will take you to the script spot community. And what this is a community of scripts for Macs. So this is a way to extend some of the things that you're doing in Macs. Now some of the scripts over here cost money, but a lot of them are free. So you have a really robust community of people that write scripts for Macs and can do things for Macs. Okay, one of the things that we're going to type in is Voronoi. We're going to be looking for a Voronoi script. Now, just so that you know what Voronoi is a type of fractal. So a fractal is a natural kind of way nature breaks things up, kind of like the veins in a leaf or the cracked mud. That kind of a pattern is a fractal. So a Voronoi is a pattern like this. So we're going to use a script to break an object up so it comes in chunks like this. Okay. So once we search for Voronoi, you'll get a bunch of hits in here because there are several of them. Okay, the specific one I want is this one called Fracture Voronoi. There's some other ones, Voronoi cells. There's some other good ones in here too, but we're going to use this one, Fracture Voronoi. So you just go to this page. You'll see here's a lot of times they'll have a little screenshot of what it looks like, or they'll have a little animation that shows you how to use it. So this is the utility we're going to do. And it breaks an object up. So there's a lot of times you'll go down here, and anytime you see an MS, that's a script for Macs. This is the original one. This is the one we want. So you just got to click on it and then save it. Okay, save it to your hard drive. So when you're in Macs, an MS file, all you have to do is just drag it into your viewport and let go of it. And then the script will pop up. Different scripts are installed different ways. Some of them are installed where you can put them into a striking menu or something. This one, just an MS just runs the one time. So when it runs and we close it, then next time you want to run it, you just drag it back into the window. Okay, so we're just going to build us a box here. Let's go ahead and just make it a gray. Okay, and then the way this works is we pick the object, so it's in here, and then we can break it apart. Now, by default, it'll do multicolors. I don't particularly like multicolors, so I'm going to go uniform so they all stay this color. You want to be in a edge mode where you can see your edges. And then what we're going to do here is the way these settings are, it's going to break it into 10 pieces. I want more than 10 pieces, so I'm going to click this iterations to 2 times 10, so it's got to be 100 pieces. According to how many pieces you do, how long it takes it to do this. So we'll just go ahead and hit break, and then it fractures it. All right, we're going to set this aside. We're going to use it several times. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some effects on this where it has gravity and will actually kind of crumble. To do that, we have to bring up mass effects. So on your menu up here, you right click over here on the right, and there's some extra menus in here. We want to use this one called mass effects. So when you do this mass effects, now a lot of times this toolbar when it comes up, it'll put it right up here. I'm going to go ahead and just tear it off. I like to have it down here close to what I'm doing. So what we're going to want to do is this is a way to add physics to an object. So we're just going to select all these pieces. Okay, and then I'm going to click and hold down on this button right here, the second one in, and I'm going to tell this to be a dynamic rigid body. Okay, that's what we want. It puts some little bounding boxes on here. Now when I hit the play button, then it's going to have this turn into physical objects, and they're going to drop. You click this same play button again to stop it, and then you can click this button to rewind it. Now that's not getting quite what I want, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it off of the ground a little bit so it has to drop. By default, the way these controls are, over here on the left is a button that you can click on, which brings up your controls, but by default it's using our ground plane as a collision, so I don't have to actually put an object in here to collide with. So now we'll play it again, and it has to drop, and then I'll give us a little bit better of a look. Now, you want to just let it keep going. It's going past 100 frames until everything stops. Okay, then turn it off. Now what I want to do is to make a copy of all this. So with all this selected, we're going to go up to our tools up here. We're going to pull down to snapshot. Snapshot makes a copy of an object at a point in time. I can leave it as default, a single piece and a mesh, and I click OK, and it made a copy of all these. So now when I rewind this, so that it goes back to its original state, you'll see it left me all these pieces down here. Now, by the way, when you're making the fractal, it makes a copy of your original piece. So my original box still exists. So at this point, I no longer need this, so I'm just going to delete it. I was only trying to get these pieces. Now, by default, it calls these whatever it originally was called, and it was called box. So I'm going to rename these. So I'm going to go to Tools, Rename Objects, bring this little utility up. I'm going to call this Big Boulders. And then I'm going to tell it to number these, and then I hit rename, and it'll rename all these big boulders. Okay, we're going to use that several times, so we can leave that up. So over here, now I've got all those highlighted. I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to create a layer for those, and we'll just call this our big boulders. All right, so now we've got some big boulders created. Let's bring our box out again. And this time I'm going to fracture it, and I want more pieces. Okay, so we're going to hit this 3 times, and it's going to create 1,000. And let's change the color. So I'm going to make these a little bit different colors so it's easy to see them. And we're going to go break. Okay, now we don't want to get this too high because it eats a lot of RAM. Okay, so now we got smaller pieces, so we're going to grab those pieces. So we'll just select them all over here, and let's move them up. And we're going to put these up a little bit higher, so they have to drop from a little bit further. Okay, let's go ahead and rename these. Actually, let's just wait. Let's go ahead and run our simulation. So we need to do the same thing here where we make these rigid bodies, and then we can run our simulation. Now, if we run our simulation, it's going to ignore these down here. It doesn't understand these. So we have to put these in our simulation too. So to do that, we pick these. And now under that same button, we want the bottom one, static rigid body. That means these will be collision objects, but they won't move. Okay, they're stationary. So now we can run our simulation, and these will drop down and collide with those. So we'll let that run. You want to just let it keep running until everything stops moving. So even though this is stopped here, it's still running past our 100 frames until everything can kind of settle into place. Okay, so once you think you let it run long enough, then just stop it. Then what we're going to do over here is hide our big boulders. We're going to select all of these, and then we're going to do our snapshot again. So we click OK. Rewind this back up here, and then here is our new little boulders. So I'm going to select those, and these are going to be medium. And we'll call this medium rocks. Rename those, and then I'm going to create a layer with those together. And so these are my medium rocks. Okay. So we got some big boulders. We got medium rocks on top of those. So I'm going to delete this now. Come back to our original box. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. Now what I'm going to do on this now is I'm going to make this box smaller. I'm going to pull it to the front of our rubble pile here. And then let's make this a different color. We'll leave it at 1,000. This is a smaller box now, so we'll make smaller parts. And we'll break that. Breaking it into some smaller pieces that we can drop on top of the other one. All right, there we go. So now we pick all of those pieces and we make those dynamic, and we run our simulation. See how they went underneath those? That's because we didn't add those into our collision. So we got to go back. Let's go in here. Let's hide our big boulders. So our medium rocks, we have to put a static rigid body on those so it understands to collide into those. Okay, so let's go ahead and move these so they cover over the top of this. Let's go ahead and create a new layer for these to be on. And then we're going to run our simulation. Okay, we gotta let it run. We got a few still tumbling in there. Then we'll turn that off. Then we need to hide our big boulders and our medium rocks. Then we can select these. Then we need to go ahead and make our snapshot of those. Then we'll rewind. Then all of these that are left down here, we're going to pick those, and we're going to call these small pebbles and rename those. And they're in this new layer, and so I need to call this layer small pebbles. Okay, then I need to make them collision also. So we'll select those, and then we'll hold down this button, make them static rigid. Then we'll unhide our different pieces. And now we're going to move this to the back side, create some more back over here. Let's make a layer for those to be on. And then let's run our simulation again. And then this will drop us some small ones on the back side of it. Okay, we'll let that run. Still got some small pieces tumbling. And then we'll stop it. Okay, then we'll hide all our other pieces. Then we'll select those, and then we'll do a snapshot. Then we rewind. We are done with this, so I can delete this. Then we want to rename these, and we're going to call these small pebbles 2. And we'll rename those. And let's give them a little bit different color than the other one. We'll go here. And then we need to name that layer Small Pebbles 2. Okay, at that point, we've got a nice rubble pile. Now, you're going to see some floating pieces in here that you'll have to deal with. So I finished renaming. I'm finished with this fractal. So you'll have to kind of look, like, see this piece right there, to me, would not be there. So I'm just going to delete that. So you may have to come in here and edit. You normally will, because this is not a foolproof way to do this. Let's go ahead and put us a plane down below them. We don't need any iterations on it. And let's put us a light in here. So we'll go in here and get us an Arnold light. Place it right over the top. Let's pull that up a little bit. And I'm going to make it a disk. Okay, and let's switch to a perspective view. Kind of frame this in. Something like that. And in perspective view, Control C will convert that to a camera. So we have a camera view, and then let's make some shaders for what we got going on here. Okay, we'll just use a physical shader for the ground. We'll pick the grounds. Let's name this ground. And assign that to it. It'll be too reflective, so we'll want to go to advanced here and turn down this reflection and turn up some roughness in here. Let's go ahead and turn on renderer in here. So we'll go up here and let's turn it into our active shade. We want Arnold on, and we want our legacy max support. Turn off auto detect -1. Let's go to our common tab. We're going to pull up to an HD TV, and I'm going to render 800 by 450 so it's faster in our viewport. We're not going to see much in here, just a little bit, because we haven't put an exposure control on yet. We need to go over to our exposure control. We need to drop in a physical camera control, turn off, use physical camera, and then we're going to leave it with our global exposure. And now we can lower this exposure. I'm going to put it at like 2. And now we've got a render of some rubble. Okay, let's make a shader for our rubble. In fact, I may turn up my light just a little bit. And let's move our light and our camera back to our default. And we'll want to turn off our renderer to do that. Okay. So now I can get to my Arnold light, and I can start giving a little bit more intensity. And so now we got a big pile of rubble. Now to make the shader for the rubble, I'm going to want to use not a physical material. I'm going to use an Arnold material. So surface, it's standard surface. And I'm going to go ahead and just freeze the ground. And then I can go ahead and pick all of my pieces, and then I'm going to apply this to it. Now the reason I want to do an Arnold shader is all of these pieces have razor sharp edges to them, and when that's kind of a digital look, so we want to round those edges. Well, a Arnold shader has a trick that you can do that. So if you go into your normal tab right here and you pull out to Arnold, into your bump, you want to get a rounded corner bump. And what that'll do is give us rounded corners to things. It's kind of a shader trick. So I'm going to turn this to 1. And then what it's going to do is it's going to round the edges of things. So let's go ahead and just kind of zoom into this where we can kind of see what's going to happen with these. And let's unplug this. We'll let it render for a minute. All right, I'm going to come in here and get a RAM player. This allows us to compare things in here. And so I'm going to click this little teapot. And I have to clone this window. Actually, the RAM player is not going to work that way. All right, we're going to turn this off. We're going to go to our actual renderer. So production, make sure everything is set back the same. And okay, now that'll help us. Okay, so now let me go back to my RAM player and click here, and then that'll load that into my RAM player. All right, so now we're going to put our normal rounded corner in, and we're going to render again. And then what that's going to do is anytime you have a hard edge, it's going to round that edge some. You kind of have to play with how wide you want the radius to be. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to my RAM player and I can compare this. I loaded the first one in A, I'll load this one in B. And so what this is going to do is give me a before and after. So this is what it looks like without the rounded corners. This is what it looks like with the rounded corners. Can you see how it's giving me these nice highlights in here? This is a shader trick. So instead of having to come in here and chamfer all these edges and make it look more volume instead of just a digital, you can do it with a shader, which is a nice little trick. Now, another thing that we can do, these are all individual pieces, and it's an advantage sometimes if they're not all individual pieces. So what we're going to do is, let's change their wireframe to black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these. And so what I'm going to do here, let's hide that camera, is I'm just going to pick one of these pieces. Okay, it's still got that rigid body on it, and I really don't want that on there anymore. So I'm just going to convert this to an editable poly. And then I'm going to go over here and click Attach by List. And then it'll give me a list of all the big boulders. And then I'm going to attach them all together. So now this is one object instead of a bunch of different objects. Now I can always get into my elements to move them around, adjust them if I want to, but this is going to make it easier for me to deal with this piece. We're going to do that with each one of these. So we'll take the medium. Just pick one. It doesn't matter which one. Convert it to an editable poly. And then go over here, Attach by List. Your list will pop up. Select all of these and attach. It may take a second. The more pieces are, the longer it takes. Okay, let's get rid of those. Got the small pebbles. We'll do one of those. Convert to editable poly. Attach by list. Attach those. It'll take a little bit longer because there's 1,000 of those. Okay. And we'll hide that one. Then we'll do the other pieces. Oops. By the way, my ground is, I need to move that up into my default. Okay, so I'll pick one of these, convert to a poly, and attach by list. Grab all of those. Attach. So now this is easier to deal with because these are just different pieces. So a nice big pile of rubble. All right, let's deal with some shader aspect now. So let's just start with say the big boulders. So we're just going to deal with the big boulder. And we're going to go in here and get us a bitmap for the base. And let's see, let me just go to, okay, so I'm going to get this piece of concrete. So I'm using a piece of concrete. View this. This is what I'm using. It's a titleable image of concrete that I'm going to put on these. Right now, these have a mapping coordinate on it, but there's not much of a mapping coordinate. It's kind of a garbage mapping coordinate. So we want to put a mapping coordinate on this. We just want to use a Uvw map. And then we want to make sure it's box map. And then we want to make sure it's square. So whatever, it doesn't matter what the number is here, just as long as all these numbers are the same. Then I don't get any stretching on my pattern that's on there. And then I can go in here to my gizmo and I can scale this up or down to get the pattern the size that I want it on there. Make sure you click in the center. So I'm going to go with something about like that. Now the other thing we can do is we want to put a bump map on it. Okay, so I'm going to unplug this rounded corner right now, and I'm going to plug an Arnold bump, 2D bump into here. And then I'm going to plug this bitmap into the bump map here. I'm going to unplug it off of my color for right now. I like to only look at the bump when I'm working to get the bump right. So let's go back to our active shade. Okay, like right there, and you can see how much bump it's putting on there. Now, to me, that's way too much bump. So on my bump, this height, I'm going to bring it way down. Maybe a 0.2. Yeah, that's much better. So I'm just getting some little pock marks in there, so don't go too high with your bump. That looks much better. Okay, then you can take this rounded corner and you can plug it into that normal right there, and then it will round those corners. So you've got the bump on it and the rounded corners both. Let's plug our base color back in. So now the color will come in. Now this shader by default is very shiny. And of course, you know, if this is concrete, it wouldn't be very shiny. So we want to turn our specular down. We're going to turn our roughness up. And then I'm going to turn my index of refraction down to maybe 1.4. We'll give it more of a chalk kind of look. And now we've got a nice look for that rubble. It's kind of a concrete kind of thing. Okay, that looks good. Then the other thing I can do is I could apply this to everything. So we could copy this mapping coordinate, and I'll show you a little trick. If I pick one of these, I can paste it on there, but if I pick all of these and I want to paste it on all of them, pick this one too, I can't paste it on there. A little trick is to come in here and put a Uvw map on it, and now you can paste on top of that one, and now you could delete that one. And so now all of these have the same mapping coordinate on it. Let's go ahead and unhide our ground. Let's go back to our camera. And so now we've got some nice rubble. We've got maps on it of concrete. Now you could put different maps on different pieces, so some of the pieces are made from different things. That's all fine. But that kind of takes you through how to create a nice piece of rubble. And of course, you don't have to just use this Voronoi. You could put other things in here. Like there are some scripts that create Haydite blocks and other things. The first tutorials I did were on particle systems. The problem with the particle systems is it's just scattering things, but there's no physics. This is a different approach, and both of these can be used together. You could use the particle systems to initially throw some things, then come and use a physics system to stack things up. All of that would work together in conjunction. Okay, so hopefully that kind of helped you in being able to, if you've got some kind of an environment that has, a bunch of rubble and stuff in it, then this is an easy way to get a lot of nice rubble really quick to pile things up, and it has this random kind of appearance instead of us just making it manually. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today.